That line will get you an applause break from all sides. When Kamala says, "We're not going back," the undecided voter thinks, "No, I don't want to get on the short bus back to Trump Town. But I also don't want to go back to 2020. Please, God, don't make me sit through another one of those corporate-mandated sensitivity training sessions."
Liberals keep rushing around trying to gather ballots, but every last push seems to fall apart right away. Maher says he clearly understands what's really causing this to happen. And now, today.
Above any matters of politics or what's right or wrong, the one thing I know for sure about America is it's run by mean girls. Mean girls in the press and in politics and in life. And when they smell blood in the water, the lust to finish off a vulnerable person will never be denied.
Through a series of fiery videos, Maher has dropped shocking reveal after shocking reveal, showing why Democrats keep losing voters again and again. And honestly, the things he points out are truly surprising to watch unfold.
In 3 years as vice president, she's been quieter than an electric car. And like an electric car, your MAGA uncle can't explain why she fills him with homicidal rage. She just does. Sometimes life isn't fair. It's not fair that she's not popular. She's intelligent and accomplished, and in fact was put in charge of the border. And look at how... Okay, bad example.
There's a huge pile of truth to sort through here. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and let's jump straight into the details.
Looting was rebranded as justice shopping. We stopped arresting shoplifters. Anti-racist baby was a bestseller. Corporations took DEI to ludicrous lengths. We opened our hearts to all who wanted to come here, and then also our borders. Portland decriminalized all drugs, and Seattle set up a no-cop zone until they had to reverse course on both. Standardized testing was dropped until schools saw how dumb that was. And yet, the head of the teachers union in Chicago still maintains that testing is, quote, junk science rooted in white supremacy.
Maher says the very first reason Democrats keep losing voters is their tight grip on wokeness. The DNC may have lost power in some places, but the bluest states still hold on tightly to what he describes as a fading idea, even while voters keep heading toward the exits. California stands out as the biggest warning sign. The Golden State is still stuck in what critics call its well-known justice loophole culture, where criminals find ways to use a broken system to escape serious punishment. At the same time, streets have turned into large homeless camps, with struggling people sleeping right on sidewalks, while leaders praise themselves for showing kindness. That harsh contradiction, talking about progressive values while cities visibly fall apart, is what Maher says is damaging democratic trust with everyday Americans. Voters aren't blind. They see what's happening. They live with it every single day. And they are tired of being lectured by the same leaders they believe created the problem in the first place.
And her union tweeted during COVID, when many Americans felt we could have gotten back to normal sooner, that the push to reopen schools is rooted in racism, and misogyny. No, it was rooted in reading, writing, and arithmetic. The teaching of which is apparently job none in Chicago, because only about 1 in 4 students in the city are proficient in either math or English, and absenteeism is off the charts. The teachers there want a raise now, and look, I'm always all for all teachers always getting a raise everywhere. I hate kids. I can't imagine being around them all day.
Another reason voters continue to walk away from the Democratic Party, according to Maher, is its troubled way of handling education. Democrats have fought strongly against standardized testing. Critics say those tests were labeled unfair instead of being seen as a simple way to check if students are actually learning anything. The growing idea that just showing up to class is enough has slowly weakened academic standards from the inside, and the results are now very hard to ignore. Maher pointed to harsh statistics to prove his case. Only 1 out of every 4 students in Chicago is considered skilled in math, English, and science. 1 out of 4. Think about that for a moment. While Democratic leaders reduced accountability and reshaped lessons around political ideas, an entire group of students quietly fell behind. These are not just numbers written on paper. They represent millions of children losing chances for better futures. Voters feel angry about this, and many believe that anger is justified. To them, it looks like a huge failure hidden behind the label of compassion.
But I also think Kamala Harris could have a moment if she trotted out her favorite phrase and said, "Let me be very clear. Our schools need to do better. Our kids need to be in school, and when they're there, they need to have the phones off and the brains on, learning the basic things we used to teach. And the idea that testing is rooted in white supremacy is in itself a racist belief that says black children can't compete with white children on tests, which they surely can."
The third reason Maher explains is what he calls the loud and impossible-to-defend silence from Democratic leaders. Not Kamala Harris, not Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, not Gavin Newsom, not Adam Schiff, not Mamdani, not Bernie Sanders, not even one well-known figure stepped forward strongly to challenge problems inside their own party. While activists pushed changes in education and introduced political ideas into schools, these leaders stayed quiet, watched events happen, and said very little. There was no pushback, no accountability, and no bold action. According to Maher, that silence did not happen by accident. He believes it was a careful choice, putting political safety ahead of protecting voters and students. Americans wanted leaders brave enough to say when things had gone too far. Instead, Maher argues, they saw agreement disguised as unity. And voters, he says, do not forget silence.
When Kamala says, "We're not going back," the undecided voter thinks, "No, I don't want to get on the short bus back to Trump Town. But I also don't want to go back to 2020. Please, God, don't make me sit through another one of those corporate-mandated sensitivity training sessions." When the Harris campaign launched, they got great traction by calling Trump and Vance weird. That was good.
Maher also points to another reason many voters want distance from the Democratic Party, what he calls the harmful legacy of DI programs and required sensitivity training. Many Americans remember those years clearly and have no interest in returning to them. That period became known, in his view, as a time when skills and experience were ignored while checkboxes tied to ideology became more important. Some people were placed into jobs they were not fully prepared for, while capable workers felt pushed aside. But the part that upset many workers the most was being forced into long workplace training sessions focused on sensitivity, where employees felt they had to be extremely careful around coworkers from certain groups. Many workers did not feel educated after those sessions. Instead, they felt talked down to and treated like children. According to Maher, voters still remember those experiences, and simply changing the label will not convince them to return to something they disliked so strongly.
Mean girls in the press and in politics and in life, and when they smell blood in the water, the lust to finish off a vulnerable person will never be denied.
The mean girls Maher talks about are what he describes as a loud group on the far left. These are social media activists who, in his view, gained heavy influence over the direction of the party. While Biden was president, this small but powerful group often appeared to guide conversations from behind computer screens. They shaped stories, influenced policies, and acted like final judges over how Americans should talk and behave. Disagreement was rarely accepted. Anyone who stepped outside their approved views was quickly criticized, publicly embarrassed, and sometimes faced career damage through cancel culture. There was little patience, little discussion, and almost no forgiveness. As this strong group continued pushing its influence, Maher says something lasting happened. The Democratic Party began to feel unwelcoming to many regular Americans. Moderate voices were ignored, common sense ideas were mocked, and many voters felt like outsiders in a party that once promised to represent them. According to Maher, this loud faction didn't just damage the party, it emptied it from the inside.
The downside is that governor of California is kind of like being conservator for Britney Spears. They'll attack him on California's homeless problem, but there's a response to that. The homeless can live anywhere, but they choose California. 9 out of 10 machete-wielding meth addicts say they wouldn't be unhoused anywhere else. Of course, the knock on Gavin has always been that he's slick.
Maher's final advice for rebuilding the Democratic Party is, in his words, very simple. He says the party should become normal again. Not extreme, not revolutionary, just steady, realistic, and easy for voters to recognize. That would mean removing identity politics from the center of the party's message, which he believes turns complicated issues into constant battles between groups claiming harm. It would also mean stepping back from what he calls an endless focus on Trump, something he believes has stopped the party from defining itself in its own way. He argues this shift would require returning to basic scientific thinking instead of reshaping facts to match political goals, and also stopping the push to rewrite long-standing social traditions too quickly. No giant plan, no dramatic reset, just a return to normal behavior. In Maher's telling, the Democratic Party doesn't need a major revolution. Instead, he says it simply needs to stop exhausting the people it hopes to win back.